She walked away from me. Now she can't walk at all. That's how cheaters end.
I stared at the crimson drops hitting the concrete floor of my garage, each one marking time like a metronome counting down to something I couldn't name yet. The wrench in my hand felt heavier than it should have, and the silence around me was the kind that comes after you've crossed a line you can't uncross. But let me back up. Let me tell you how it really started. 3 weeks ago, I was Eric Bennett, owner of Bennett's Auto Repair, married to Melissa for 12 years, father to 2 kids I'd have died for. 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew what my life was. I was wrong about everything. It began with an oil stain. Melissa's Honda had been leaking transmission fluid for months, leaving these perfect little rainbow circles on our driveway. She kept promising to bring it in, but there was always something. Yoga class, book club, errands that took all day and left her exhausted. "I'll fix it this weekend," I told her that Tuesday morning, watching her gulp down coffee like she was late for something important. "You don't have to, Eric." "I can take it somewhere," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Somewhere? I own a garage, Mel." She shrugged, grabbed her purse, and kissed my cheek with lips that tasted like lies I hadn't learned to recognize yet. That afternoon, I pulled her car into Bay 2 and got underneath. The transmission pan was loose, just needed tightening. 5-minute job. But while I was down there, I noticed something else. The GPS tracker I'd installed 6 months ago when her car got broken into was hanging loose, its wire exposed. I'd forgotten about that thing completely. Installed it for security. She'd agreed it was smart. Good thing, too, because when I reconnected it and checked the history on my phone, I found 3 months of trips to places Melissa had never mentioned. The Seaside Motel, every Tuesday and Thursday, for 2 hours. Yoga class, my A. I sat in that garage bay for an hour, staring at those little dots on the map, feeling something cold and sharp growing in my chest. Then I did what any smart man would do. I started digging. Our joint accounts showed cash withdrawals I didn't remember. 700 here, 1,000 there. When I added them up, it came to nearly $70,000 over 6 months. Money that should have been going to our daughter's college fund, our son's braces, the new equipment I needed for the shop. Money that was gone. I found the second phone in her underwear drawer that night while she showered. A cheap burner, but the photos on it weren't cheap at all. Melissa on a yacht I'd never seen. Laughing with a man I recognized from around town. Dean Kessler, the real estate shark who drove the red Porsche and owned half the waterfront property. In one photo, she was wearing a necklace I'd never bought her. In another, she was wearing nothing at all. I put the phone back exactly where I found it and went downstairs to pour myself 3 fingers of bourbon. Then I sat at our kitchen table, the one we'd bought when we first got married, and I started planning. The next morning, Melissa announced she was going to yoga. "Take your time," I said, handing her a travel mug of coffee. "I'll pick up Emma from soccer practice." She smiled, the same smile she'd given me for 12 years, and I watched her drive away in her Honda with its perfectly functioning transmission. Then I called my mechanic, Hank, and told him to cover the shop for a few hours. "Everything okay, boss?" Hank asked. He was 62, built like a brick wall, and had worked for me since I opened 5 years ago. He could smell trouble like oil smoke. "Just need to run some errands," I said. The Seaside Motel was a dump, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. I parked across the street and waited. Melissa's Honda was already there, parked next to Dean's Porsche like they belonged together. Room 247. I could see the curtains were drawn. I waited 2 hours, watching the door, feeling that cold thing in my chest grow bigger. When they finally came out, Melissa was laughing at something Dean had said, her hair messy, her lips swollen. She looked happy, happier than I'd seen her in years. They kissed goodbye like teenagers, all hands and hunger, and I understood that this wasn't just sex. This was love, the kind she used to give me, back when we were young and stupid and thought we'd figured everything out. I followed Dean to his office downtown, a glass and steel monument to his success, Kessler Real Estate, where dreams came true for the right price. I sat in my truck and watched him through the windows, making deals, shaking hands, being the kind of man who took what he wanted. Then I drove home and made dinner for my kids. "Where's Mom?" Emma asked. She was 14, smart enough to notice patterns. "Working late," I said, serving up spaghetti and forcing myself to smile. "You know how busy she's been." But Tommy, who was 9 and still believed the world made sense, just shrugged and asked if he could have seconds. After they went to bed, I sat in my home office and opened Melissa's laptop. She'd always been careless with passwords, using our anniversary date for everything. Inside her email, I found 3 months of conversations with someone named Karen Pierce, Melissa's college friend who'd moved to town last year. The emails made me sick. "Eric's so boring," Melissa had written. "All he talks about is carburetors and mortgage payments. Dean makes me feel alive again." Karen's responses were worse. "You deserve better, hun. Life's too short to settle for a mechanic when you could have a millionaire." There were dozens of messages, all variations on the same theme. How I was holding Melissa back. How she deserved more than a small-town life with a blue-collar husband. How Dean was her ticket to something better. But the worst part was the planning. They weren't just having an affair. They were plotting an exit strategy. Melissa had been slowly transferring money from our accounts to a cryptocurrency wallet. The business account, our savings, even the kids' college funds. All of it converted to Bitcoin and hidden where I couldn't touch it. According to the emails, she was planning to file for divorce next month and claim I'd been abusive. She'd get custody, alimony, and half of everything else. Then she'd sell her share of our house and disappear with Dean to Costa Rica, where they'd already put money down on a villa. The kids weren't part of the plan. I printed everything. Every email, every bank statement, every photo from that burner phone. Then I went to our bedroom where Melissa was sleeping peacefully, dreaming of her new life, and I watched her breathe. She looked so innocent in the dark, like the girl I'd married when we were both 25 and thought love could conquer anything. Her hair was spread across the pillow and she was smiling slightly, probably dreaming about Dean's hands on her body or the Costa Rican sunshine on her face. I wanted to wake her up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her until she explained how we'd gotten here, how the woman who'd cried happy tears at our wedding could plan to destroy everything we'd built. Instead, I went downstairs and started making phone calls. The next Tuesday, I followed Melissa to the motel again. But this time, I didn't wait in the parking lot. I knocked on the door of room 247 at exactly 3:47 p.m. Dean answered, shirtless and annoyed. When he saw me, his face went white. "Eric," he said, trying to block the doorway. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I pushed past him into the room. "Because it looks like you're screwing my wife." Melissa was sitting on the bed, pulling her clothes on with shaking hands. Her face was flushed, guilty, but there was something else there too. Relief, like she was glad the pretending was finally over. "How long?" I asked her. She looked at Dean, then back at me. "Eric, I can explain." "How long, Melissa?" 6 months, she whispered. "And the money?" Her eyes widened. She hadn't expected me to know about that. "What money?" Dean asked, but his voice cracked like a teenager's. I laughed, and the sound that came out of me was nothing like joy. "The $700,000 you two have been stealing from my family." Dean's face went from white to green. 700? "Melissa, you said it was just a few thousand." "It was supposed to be," she said. But she was looking at me now, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Hatred. Pure, cold hatred. "But Eric's so stupid with money." He never even noticed. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not just the amount, which was everything we had and more, but the contempt in her voice. Like I was some kind of fool who deserved what was happening to him. "You mortgaged our house," I said. It wasn't a question. I'd figured it out on the drive over. "You forged my signature and mortgaged our house." "I had to," she said, standing up now, fully dressed but looking smaller somehow. "You would never have understood. You would have tried to stop me." "Stop you from what? Stealing from our children?" "Stop me from being happy." The words exploded out of her like they'd been building pressure for years. "Do you know what it's like being married to someone who thinks changing oil is a career? Someone who's perfectly content to live in the same house, drive the same truck, have the same conversations for the rest of his life?" Dean was backing toward the bathroom, probably looking for his pants, but I ignored him. This was between Melissa and me now. "I gave you everything," I said. "You gave me nothing," she shot back. "Nothing but routine and mediocrity and small-town dreams that were never big enough." Dean showed me what life could be like. What I could be like. "And what about Emma and Tommy?" For the first time, she hesitated. "They'll understand when they're older." "Understand what?" "That their mother abandoned them for money? That their mother chose herself for once instead of settling for less. I stared at her. This woman I'd loved for 17 years if you counted the dating time. And I realized I was looking at a stranger. The Melissa I'd married would never have said those words. The Melissa I'd married would have fought for our family, not against it. "You're pathetic," she said, grabbing her purse. "You always were." "I just convinced myself you'd grow out of it." Dean finally found his voice. "Look, Eric, maybe we can work something out, business to business." I turned to him, and whatever he saw in my face made him take a step back. "Business to business?" I said. "You mean like how you're planning to take my wife to Costa Rica with my money?" His mouth fell open. Melissa had obviously not shared all the details of their plan. "That's right, Dean. She's been stealing from me for months to fund your little love nest. Did you think she was paying for those yacht trips with her yoga instructor salary?" I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the bank transfers. "This is felony theft, Dean. Grand larceny. And since you've been spending the money, that makes you an accessory." "I didn't know," he said, but he was lying. The way his eyes darted around the room looking for an exit told me everything I needed to know. "Yes, you did," I said. "You both did. You thought you were so much smarter than the stupid mechanic. You thought I'd never figure it out." Melissa was at the door now, keys in her hand. "This conversation is over, Eric. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." "No," I said, and something in my voice made her freeze. "You'll be hearing from mine, and from the police, and from the IRS, because I'm betting you didn't declare any of this stolen money as income." She turned back to me, and for a moment I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. "You can't prove anything," she said. I smiled, and it felt like breaking glass. "Watch me." Melissa collapsed 3 days later. She was driving back from another meeting with Dean, probably planning their next move, when she pulled over on Highway 9 and called 911. The paramedics found her unconscious behind the wheel, her car idling on the shoulder. The doctors said it was a stroke, caused by a combination of stress and an untreated infection. Apparently, Dean had given her more than just empty promises and stolen dreams. He'd given her chlamydia, which she'd ignored for months, while her body slowly poisoned itself. The infection had spread to her nervous system, causing inflammation that led to the stroke. The left side of her body was paralyzed, and the doctors weren't sure how much function she'd regain. I got the call at the garage. Detective Moen, a decent guy I'd known since high school, told me what happened and asked if I wanted to go to the hospital. "She's asking for you," he said. I finished changing Mrs. Patterson's brake pads, washed my hands, and drove to St. Mary's. I didn't hurry. Melissa was in ICU, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed like mechanical prayers. Her face was slack on one side, her left arm curled against her chest like a broken wing. She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile in a way that would have broken my heart a week ago. Now, I felt nothing. "Eric," she whispered when she saw me. Her speech was slurred, like she was drunk. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I pulled up a chair and sat down. The room smelled like disinfectant and fear. "Where's Dean?" I asked, her good eye filled with tears. "He left when the doctors said—" "When they said I might not walk again, he left." "And Karen?" "She won't return my calls." I nodded. I'd expected as much. Fair-weather friends always disappear when the weather turns bad. "The money," she said. "I can tell you how to get it back. The passwords, the wallet addresses, everything." "I already got it back," I said. Her eye widened. "How?" "You used our anniversary for everything, Mel. Even your crypto passwords. You always were predictable." That wasn't entirely true. I'd had to hire a specialist, a former NSA guy who charged $5,000 to crack her accounts. But she didn't need to know that. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered. "Yes, you did," I said, standing up. "You meant for all of it to happen. You just didn't mean to get caught." I pulled an envelope from my jacket and placed it on her bedside table. "Divorce papers. I'm filing for custody of the kids, and I'm claiming abandonment and theft. My lawyer says it's a slam dunk." "Eric, please, the children need their mother." "No," I said, walking toward the door. "They need a mother. You're just the woman who gave birth to them." I left her there, crying and calling my name, and I didn't look back. I sold the garage 3 weeks later, not to just anyone. To Hank, who'd been running the day-to-day operations anyway. I gave him a deal he couldn't refuse, 10,000 down and payments over 5 years. It was less than the business was worth, but I didn't care about the money anymore. I cared about freedom. With Melissa in a long-term care facility and facing criminal charges for the theft, I got emergency custody of Emma and Tommy. They took the divorce hard, but kids are resilient. They adapted to our new reality faster than I expected. "Are we moving?" Emma asked, watching me pack boxes in our living room. "Yeah, kiddo. Time for a fresh start." "Good," she said, and the venom in her voice surprised me. I hate this place now. Tommy was quieter about it, but I caught him one day tearing up the Mother's Day card he'd made at school. When I asked him why, he just shrugged and said, "She's not really our mom anymore, is she?" Out of the mouths of babes. I'd been planning our exit for weeks, using some of the same techniques Melissa had tried to use on me. I set up a new LLC in Oregon under the name Rick Carson, transferred assets carefully, and established residency in a small coastal town called Millport. It was the kind of place where people minded their own business and paid cash for car repairs. The kids started new schools under our new last name, Carson. It had a nice ring to it. Emma became Emily Carson, honor roll student and soccer star. Tommy became Tyler Carson, the kid who could fix anything with wheels. They adapted to their new identities like they were born to them. As for me, I became the man I should have been all along. Rick Carson, owner of Carson's Garage, widower raising 2 kids alone. The story I told people was simple. My wife died in a car accident, and we'd moved to start over. People ate it up. Small towns love a tragic hero, especially one who works hard and keeps his mouth shut. I worked out every morning, running along the coast until my lungs burned. I learned to cook more than just spaghetti and hamburgers. I read books, watched documentaries, traveled with the kids on school breaks. I became interesting, the kind of man a woman might actually want to be with. But I wasn't done with my old life yet. A year later, I got a call from Detective Moen. "Eric, it's Jim. Listen, I thought you should know. Melissa's being released from the care facility next week." I was in my new garage, underneath a 1967 Mustang that belonged to the mayor's wife. My hands didn't shake when I answered the phone, but something cold and familiar stirred in my chest. "Released to where?" I asked. "Halfway house in Portland. The state's dropping the theft charges as part of a plea deal. She'll do community service and pay restitution." "What restitution? She doesn't have any money." "That's the thing. Someone posted her bail and hired her a lawyer. A good one." I knew who it was before he said the name. "Dean Kessler." "Yeah. Apparently he's been visiting her in the facility." Real touching reunion. I finished with the Mustang and closed the garage early. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on my deck overlooking the Pacific and made some phone calls. The private investigator I hired was a woman named Janet Pierce, no relation to Karen despite the last name. She was ex-FBI, expensive, and very good at finding things people didn't want found. "What exactly are you looking for?" she asked. "Everything," I said. "Financial records, travel history, business dealings, personal relationships. I want to know what Dean Kessler had for breakfast last Tuesday." It took her 3 weeks to compile the report, and when she emailed it to me, I understood why Dean had been able to afford Melissa's legal bills. He'd been running a real estate scam for years, selling the same properties to multiple buyers and using new investor money to pay off the old ones. A classic Ponzi scheme disguised as luxury development deals. He was also laundering money for some very unfriendly people who wouldn't appreciate having their business exposed. But the most interesting part of the report wasn't about Dean at all. It was about Melissa. She'd been playing a longer game than I'd realized. The affair with Dean wasn't just about love or money. It was about revenge. According to Janet's research, Melissa had been in contact with my ex-business partner, a man named Jack Sullivan, who tried to sue me 3 years ago over some disputed contracts. Jack had lost the case and blamed me for his subsequent bankruptcy. Apparently, he'd been feeding Melissa information about my finances and encouraging her relationship with Dean. The whole thing had been a setup from the beginning. Melissa, Dean, and Jack working together to destroy me financially and personally. They'd planned to take everything I had and leave me with nothing but debt and disgrace. They'd almost succeeded. I printed out Janet's report, all 47 pages of it, and put it in a safe deposit box. Then, I bought a plane ticket to Portland. I found them at a restaurant downtown, celebrating something. Melissa was in a wheelchair, her left side still weak from the stroke, but she was laughing at something Dean had said. She looked better than she had in the hospital, healthier, like betrayal agreed with her. They were with another couple I didn't recognize and Karen Pierce, who looked exactly the same as she had a year ago. Successful, smug, completely unaware that her world was about to implode. I walked to their table and sat down in the empty chair like I'd been invited. "Hello, Mel," I said. The conversation stopped. Everyone stared at me like I was a ghost, which in a way I was. Eric Bennett was dead. Rick Carson was someone else entirely. "Eric," Melissa whispered, "what are you doing here?" "Having dinner," I said, signaling the waiter. "This is a public restaurant, isn't it?" Dean found his voice first. "Look, Eric, I don't want any trouble." "Neither do I said, ordering a beer from the nervous waiter. "I just want to catch up with old friends." "How did you find us?" Karen asked. "It wasn't hard. You people are creatures of habit." I looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. "Same restaurant you used to plan your little scheme. Same corner booth, same smug expressions." "We don't know what you're talking about," Melissa said, but her voice shook. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder. Not the full report, just the highlights. Bank records, email printouts, photographs of meetings I wasn't supposed to know about. "Jack Sullivan says hello," I said, dropping the folder on the table. "Interesting guy, Jack. Very talkative when he's facing prison time for conspiracy to commit fraud." Dean's face went white. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can prove everything." I opened my beer and took a long sip. "Did you know the FBI has been investigating your real estate deals for 6 months? No? Well, they have. And if they find out about the money laundering, things are going to get very interesting for you." "You're bluffing," Karen said, but she was already reaching for her purse. "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and showed them a text message. "That's from Agent Sarah McKay, Federal Financial Crimes Division. She's very interested in meeting with all of you." The lie came easily. There was no Agent McKay, no federal investigation yet. But there would be once I made a few more phone calls. "What do you want?" Melissa asked. "Justice," I said. "You destroyed my family, stole my money, and tried to ruin my life. Now it's your turn." I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table for my beer. "Oh, and Melissa, the kids are doing great. Emma made varsity soccer, and Tommy's building a robot for the science fair. They don't ask about you anymore." Her face crumpled like wet paper, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "They're my children," she whispered. "No," I said. "They were your children. Now they're mine." I walked away, leaving them with their fear and their folder full of evidence, and I didn't look back. The lake house burned down 2 weeks later. It was the place where Melissa and Dean had spent their affair weekends, a rental property that Dean had been using for his various schemes. The fire started around midnight and burned hot and fast, leaving nothing but a blackened foundation and the smell of smoke that lingered for days. The fire marshal ruled it accidental. Faulty electrical wiring, probably sparked by a power surge during the storm that night. "These old places weren't built to modern standards," he said. Tragic, but not uncommon. I watched the report on the news from my living room in Millport, drinking coffee and helping Tyler with his math homework. Emily was at soccer practice, and the house was quiet except for the sound of rain on the windows. "Dad," Tyler said, looking up from his textbook, "do you ever miss home?" "This is home," I said. "I mean our old home, where we used to live with Mom." I thought about it for a moment, really thought about it. Did I miss the house where I'd raised my children, built my first business, loved a woman who'd turned out to be a stranger? Did I miss the man I'd been before I learned what betrayal tasted like? "No," I said, and I meant it. "That wasn't really home. It was just a place we lived." He nodded, like that made perfect sense, and went back to his homework. The next morning, Janet Pierce called with an update. "Dean Kessler was arrested last night," she said. "Federal charges. Money laundering, fraud, conspiracy. He's looking at 20 to life." "And Melissa?" "Still cooperating with prosecutors. They're offering her immunity in exchange for testimony against Dean and Jack Sullivan." "Smart," I said. She always was good at saving her own skin. "There's something else," Janet said. "The halfway house where she was staying, it burned down 3 days after the lake house. Everyone got out safe, but all her personal belongings were destroyed." including her computers and files. I wasn't surprised. Melissa had always been careless with electrical appliances. Anything else? I asked. Karen Pierce's husband filed for divorce. Apparently, he found out about her role in encouraging the affair. He's taking the kids and half their assets. Shame, I said, meaning it. The kids didn't deserve to pay for their mother's choices. But Karen did. Laura walked into my garage on a Tuesday morning in March, driving a BMW with a rattling exhaust pipe. She was beautiful, in an understated way. Blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than I used to make in a week. But she didn't act rich. She thanked me for taking a look at her car, asked questions about the repair process, and paid in cash without complaining about the price. "You're new in town," she said while I wrote up the invoice. "How can you tell? Small place like this, everyone knows everyone. Plus, you don't have the local accent. Where are you from?" "Back east," I said, which was true enough. "You?" "Portland originally. I bought the old Harrison place up on Cliff Road last month. I'm a writer working on a novel. Needed somewhere quiet to finish it." We started seeing each other a few weeks later. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and walks on the beach while the kids were at school. She was easy to talk to, funny without being cruel, smart without being condescending. She treated Emily and Tyler like real people instead of obstacles to our relationship. "What's your book about?" I asked her one evening. We were sitting on my deck sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sunset paint the ocean gold. "Betrayal," she said, "and revenge. And whether people can really change or if we're all just stuck being who we've always been. Sounds dark. Life is dark sometimes." She looked at me with those green eyes that seemed to see more than they should. But it's also beautiful. Even after terrible things happen, there's still beauty. I was falling in love with her, which scared me more than I wanted to admit. After Melissa, I'd convinced myself that I was done with love, done with trust, done with giving another person the power to destroy me. But Laura was different. She knew about my past, or at least the version I'd told her. The dead wife, the fresh start, the man trying to rebuild his life for his children. She didn't judge me for being careful, for keeping parts of myself locked away. She said everyone had secrets, and the smart ones were selective about who they shared them with. We'd been together 6 months when she asked me to marry her. "Shouldn't I be the one proposing?" I asked. "Why?" "Because you're the man?" She laughed, that free, genuine sound that had made me fall for her in the first place. "I'm 42 years old, Rick. I don't have time for traditional courtship rituals. I love you love me, the kids love me. What are we waiting for?" I said yes because she was right. Life was too short to waste time being afraid. We got married on the beach behind our house, just me, Laura, the kids, and a justice of the peace who doubled as the town's barber. Emily and Tyler were ecstatic, not just because they liked Laura, but because the wedding meant we were really, truly done with our old life. "So, does this mean I get to call you Mom?" Tyler asked Laura at the reception, which was really just a barbecue in our backyard. "Only if you want to," she said, hugging him. "I'm honored either way." For the first time in 2 years, I felt like I could breathe again. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. Laura brought it in with the rest of the mail, frowning at the return address. "It's from someone named Detective Moen in your old town. Should I be worried?" I took the letter and opened it, expecting news about Melissa's trial or Dean's sentencing. Instead, I found something that made my blood freeze. "Eric," Jim Moen had written in his careful cop handwriting, "I thought you should know. Melissa Bennett died yesterday. Apparent self-destruction. She left a note, but it doesn't make much sense. Something about being sorry and hoping you could forgive her. The funeral is Friday if you want to come. I understand if you don't." I read the letter 3 times before the words sank in. Melissa was dead. The woman who'd tried to destroy my life, who'd stolen from our children, who'd broken every promise she'd ever made to me, was gone. I should have felt something. Relief maybe, or closure, or even grief for the woman she'd been before she became someone I didn't recognize. Instead, I felt nothing at all. "Bad news?" Laura asked, watching my face. "My ex-wife died," I said. "Oh, Rick. I'm so sorry." She sat down next to me and put her hand on my shoulder. "Do you need to go back for the funeral?" "No," I said, folding the letter and putting it in my pocket. "She's not my problem anymore." That night, after the kids were asleep, I walked down to the beach and stood at the water's edge. The waves were gentle, lapping at the sand like whispered apologies. The moon was full, turning the ocean silver and making everything look like a dream. I thought about Melissa, about the last time I'd seen her alive in that restaurant in Portland. She'd looked broken then, defeated, like she finally understood the weight of what she'd done. Maybe that understanding had been too much for her to carry. Or maybe she'd just run out of people to manipulate. I pulled out my phone and called the kid's therapist, Dr. Sarah Martinez. We'd been seeing her since the move to help them process the divorce and everything that came after. Dr. Martinez? It's Rick Carson. I'm sorry to call so late, but I need to schedule some sessions for Emily and Tyler. Their biological mother just passed away, and I want to make sure they have support to process this. We talked for 20 minutes about how to tell them, how to help them grieve for someone they'd already lost long before she died. Doctor. Martinez was good at her job, calm and practical, and focused on what was best for the kids. After I hung up, I walked back to the house where my family was sleeping. My real family, the one I'd built from the ashes of my old life. Laura had left a light on for me, and I could see Tyler's robot project on the kitchen table, half finished and brilliant. Emily's soccer cleats were by the door, muddy from practice. This was what mattered. This was what I'd fought for and earned and deserved. I was about to go inside when I heard a car pull into the driveway. It was late for visitors, almost midnight, and I felt that old, familiar tension creep into my shoulders. Old habits from when every unexpected visitor might bring bad news. A man got out of a dark sedan and walked toward me. He was middle-aged, well-dressed, carrying a briefcase like he was making a business call. But something about him set off every alarm I had. "Rick Carson?" he asked. "Depends who's asking." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Detective Warren Blackwood, Portland Police. I was hoping we could talk about your late wife, Melissa Bennett." My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice steady. Ex-wife, and I already heard about her passing. Tragic, but not my concern anymore. Actually, it is your concern. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. You see, Melissa didn't commit self-destruction. She was liquidated. And you, mister Carson, are our prime suspect? The world tilted sideways for a moment. Behind me, the house where my children slept peacefully seemed suddenly fragile, like it might disappear if I took my eyes off it. "That's impossible," I said. "I was here. I haven't left town in months." "Can you prove that?" Blackwood asked. "Do you have witnesses who can account for your whereabouts 3 nights ago between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m.? I thought about it. 3 nights ago, I'd been home with the kids. Laura had been at a writers' conference in Seattle, not due back until Thursday. Emily and Tyler had gone to bed early, and I'd spent the evening working on invoices in my office. My children were here, I said. They can vouch for me. Children aren't reliable witnesses, Mr. Carson, and they sleep heavily, don't they? Easy enough to slip out after they're asleep and drive back to Portland. It's only 4 hours each way. This is insane. Why would I eliminate Melissa? She was already facing prison time. Her life was already ruined. Blackwood smiled that cold smile again. That's what we're trying to figure out, but here's what we do know. Someone broke into her apartment 3 nights ago. Someone who knew her habits, knew she'd be alone, knew exactly how to get inside without triggering the security system. Someone with intimate knowledge of her routines. Half the men in Portland knew her routines by now, but half the men in Portland don't have motive like you do. The theft, the affair, the custody battle. And then there's this. He pulled out a photograph and showed it to me. It was grainy, taken from a security camera, but it showed a man in a dark jacket walking away from Melissa's building. The figure was too far away to identify clearly, but he was about my height and build. This was taken at 11:43 p.m., 2 hours before the estimated time of passing. The man's face isn't visible, but look at the way he walks. Look at his build. Sound familiar? I stared at the photo, feeling the ground shift under my feet. The man in the picture could have been me. Could have been 100 other men, but in the right light, with the right motivation, it could definitely have been me. I want a lawyer, I said. Of course you do. But here's the thing, Rick. We don't have enough evidence to arrest you yet. This is just a friendly conversation between colleagues. A chance for you to tell your side of the story before things get complicated. My side of the story is simple. I didn't eliminate Melissa Bennett. I didn't even know she was dead until tonight. Then you won't mind if we search your property? Look through your vehicles, check your computer records. If you're innocent, you have nothing to hide. Before I could answer, the front door opened and Laura stepped out onto the porch. She was wearing one of my old shirts as a nightgown, her hair messy from sleep, but her eyes were alert and focused. "Rick, is everything okay?" "Go back inside," I said. "This doesn't concern you." But Blackwood was already walking toward her, his hunter's smile widening. "Actually, it does concern her. You're Laura Carson, correct? Rick's new wife?" "Yes," she said, stepping closer to me. "Who are you?" "Detective Blackwood, Portland Police. I'm investigating the homicide of your husband's ex-wife. I don't suppose you can account for his whereabouts 3 nights ago." Laura looked at me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Something that might have been fear or calculation or both. "He was here," she said. "We had dinner together, watched a movie, went to bed around 11. "That's interesting," Blackwood said, making a note in his little book. "Because according to my information, you were in Seattle 3 nights ago at a writers' conference, checked into the Fairmont Olympic Hotel at 3 p.m., attended the welcome dinner at 7 p.m. About 200 witnesses." The silence stretched between us like a loaded weapon. Laura's lie hung in the air, obvious and damning, and I realized that whatever game we'd been playing, the rules had just changed. "I misspoke," Laura said, but her voice was steady. "I was thinking of a different night. You're right, I was in Seattle." "So you can't actually account for your husband's whereabouts," Blackwood said. "How unfortunate." I put my arm around Laura's shoulders, feeling the tension in her muscles. "Detective, unless you're planning to arrest me, I think this conversation is over. It's late, my family needs their sleep, and I have a business to run in the morning." "Of course," Blackwood said, closing his briefcase. "But, Mr. Carson, don't leave town. We'll be in touch very soon." He walked back to his car, and I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing into the darkness like red eyes closing. "Rick," Laura said, her voice barely a whisper. "We need to talk." We sat in the kitchen, facing each other across the table where we'd shared hundreds of meals, and I realized I was looking at another stranger. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Known what? Don't." The word came out harder than I intended. "Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything." She was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Older, somehow. Like she was dropping a mask she'd worn for so long, she'd forgotten what her real face looked like. "I've known who you really were since the day I walked into your garage," she said. "Eric Bennett, not Rick Carson, husband of Melissa Bennett, father of Emma and Tommy Bennett, owner of Bennett's Auto Repair." The words hit me like physical blows. "Who are you?" "I'm exactly who I said I was." Laura Hayes, writer from Portland, working on a novel about betrayal and revenge. The only thing I didn't mention was that the novel isn't fiction. She reached into the drawer beside her and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside were photographs, documents, newspaper clippings, all about me, my family, my old life. "I was hired to find you," she said, "by someone who had a very strong interest in your whereabouts." "Dean?" "No. Dean's been in federal prison for 8 months. Try again." I looked through the photographs, trying to piece together who might want to track me down. Most of my old enemies were dead, in prison, or had moved on with their lives. There was really only one person left who had reason to hate me enough to hire a private investigator. Jack Sullivan. Bingo! She pulled out another photograph, this one showing me and Jack shaking hands outside a courthouse 3 years ago. He never got over losing that lawsuit. When you disappeared, he became obsessed with finding you. He wanted to destroy your new life the way you'd destroyed his old one. So you seduced me. "No." Her voice was firm, almost angry. "That was never the plan. The plan was to confirm your identity, report back to Jack, and let him handle the rest. But then I met Emily and Tyler, and I saw how hard you were working to give them a normal life. I saw the man you'd become, not just the man you'd been, and you fell in love with me. I fell in love with all of you, the whole family, which created a problem because Jack didn't just want to know where you were. He wanted revenge. I thought about Melissa's passing, about the timing, about how convenient it was that she died just as my new life was becoming solid and secure. He eliminated her," I said. "Jack eliminated Melissa to frame me." "Yes, and I helped him. The words hung between us like smoke from a funeral pyre. I stared at the woman I'd married, the woman who'd held my children when they cried, who'd made love to me on this same kitchen table, who'd promised to honor and protect our family. Why? Because he had leverage on me, too. She pulled out one more photograph, this one showing a young girl, maybe 8 years old, with Laura's green eyes and blonde hair. My daughter, Sophie. She lives with my ex-husband in Denver. Jack found out about some questionable financial decisions I'd made after my divorce. He threatened to have me arrested for embezzlement, which would mean losing custody of Sophie forever. So you chose your daughter over my family. I chose my daughter over justice for a woman who tried to destroy you and your children. Don't pretend Melissa Bennett was some innocent sufferer, Eric. She was a thief and a liar who got exactly what she deserved. The rational part of my brain knew she was right. Melissa had been poison, and the world was probably better off without her. But the part of me that had once loved her, that had grieved for the woman she used to be, felt sick at the idea that she'd died alone and afraid. How did you do it? I didn't eliminate her myself, if that's what you're asking. But I provided Jack with her address, her schedule, her security codes. I told him which nights she'd be alone, which route she took when she walked her dog. I made it possible. And the security camera footage? Jack's about your height and build. He wore clothes similar to yours, walked the way you walk. He studied you for months, Eric. He knows your mannerisms better than you do. I felt trapped, caught in a web I hadn't even known existed. Every choice I'd made, every step I'd taken to build a new life had been observed and cataloged and used against me. What happens now? I asked. Now Jack expects me to testify that you confessed to eliminate Melissa. He expects me to say you showed me the security footage and bragged about how you'd gotten away with homicide. And will you? She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw tears in her eyes for the first time since I'd known her. I don't know, she whispered. I love you, Eric. I love our life together. But Sophie is my daughter. She's all I have left of the person I used to be before everything went wrong. I reached across the table and took her hand. Her skin was cold, trembling, and I realized she was just as trapped as I was. There has to be another way, I said. What way? Jack has evidence linking me to Melissa's homicide. If I don't testify against you, he'll turn me over to the police. I'll go to prison, and Sophie will grow up thinking her mother was a butcher. She'll grow up thinking her mother was a butcher anyway if you send an innocent man to prison. But she'll grow up with her father, in a stable home, with a chance at a normal life. That's more than I can give her if I'm in prison. The kitchen was quiet except for the sound of the ocean outside, waves beating against the shore like a heartbeat counting down to something final. I thought about Emily and Tyler sleeping upstairs, trusting that their world was safe and stable. I thought about the life we'd built here, the peace we'd found after so much chaos. And I thought about Jack Sullivan, sitting somewhere in the darkness, pulling strings like a puppet master, destroying lives because his own had been destroyed. No, I said. No what? No, I won't let him win. I won't let him use you to destroy our family. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the ocean that had become my sanctuary. We're going to fight this, both of us, together. Eric, you don't understand. The evidence can be challenged, explained, discredited. But first, we need to get Jack to make a mistake. I turned back to her, and something in my expression made her sit up straighter. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Jack Sullivan is about to learn what real revenge looks like. The next morning, I called in sick to the garage and drove to Portland. Not to run, not to hide, but to hunt. Jack Sullivan had made this personal when he involved my family, and I was going to make sure he regretted that decision. I found him at a diner near the waterfront, eating breakfast and reading the newspaper like he didn't have a care in the world. He'd aged since I'd last seen him, gray at the temples and soft around the middle, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating, full of bitter intelligence. I slid into the booth across from him and watched his face change when he recognized me. Eric Bennett, he said, setting down his coffee cup. I wondered when you'd show up. Did you? Or were you expecting the police to drag me here in handcuffs? He smiled, and I remembered why I'd never liked him even when we were partners. Oh, that would have been more satisfying, I'll admit. But this works too. You eliminated Melissa. I defended myself against a dangerous criminal who was threatening to expose my business dealings. The fact that she happened to be your ex-wife was just a happy coincidence. The casual way he said it, like homicide was just another business transaction, made me want to reach across the table and break his neck. But I needed him alive and talking. What business dealings? The same ones you ruined when you sued me 3 years ago. I was running a very profitable operation, importing luxury cars from Europe and selling them to collectors who didn't ask too many questions about provenance. Your lawsuit exposed my methods and cost me everything. Your methods were illegal. You were selling stolen cars. I was providing a service to people who appreciated fine automobiles. The fact that some of those automobiles had complicated ownership histories was irrelevant. I leaned back in the booth, studying his face. So you decided to frame me for homicide. I decided to give you the same gift you gave me. The destruction of everything you'd worked for. The loss of your freedom, your family, your future. Justice, Eric. Pure and simple. And Laura? Laura is a very talented actress. Also a very desperate mother. Amazing how much people will do for their children, isn't it? A chill ran down my spine. Where's Sophie? His smile widened. Safe. For now. But her continued safety depends on Laura's cooperation. And yours. What do you want? I want you to confess, publicly. I want you to admit that you eliminated Melissa Bennett in a fit of rage over her betrayal. I want you to destroy your own life the way you destroyed mine. And if I don't? Then Laura testifies that you confessed to her. Little Sophie has a tragic accident, and you go to prison knowing that your selfish pride cost 2 innocent people their lives. The diner was crowded with mourning customers, normal people living normal lives, unaware that they were sitting 20 feet away from a conversation about homicide and blackmail. I envied them their ignorance. You're insane, I said. I'm methodical. There's a difference. I've been planning this for 3 years, Eric. Every detail, every contingency, every possible outcome. You can't win because I won't let you win. I stood up to leave, but his voice stopped me. Oh, and Eric? The police will be searching your property this afternoon. They have a warrant based on an anonymous tip about suspicious activity at your address. Amazing what people notice when they're motivated to look closely. My blood turned to ice. What did you plant? Nothing dramatic. Just some of Melissa's personal effects. A piece of jewelry she was wearing when she died, some financial documents with your fingerprints on them. Circumstantial evidence, but combined with Laura's testimony, it should be enough to convince a jury. I wanted to eliminate him right there in that diner, in front of all those innocent people eating their pancakes and reading their newspapers. I wanted to wrap my hands around his throat and squeeze until his eyes bulged and his face turned purple, and he understood what it felt like to be helpless. Instead, I walked away. But I didn't go home. Not yet. I had one more stop to make. Detective Blackwood was waiting for me in the parking lot of my garage when I got back to Millport that afternoon. He wasn't alone. 3 squad cars, 2 unmarked sedans, and a van that probably contained a forensics team. Mr. Carson, he said as I got out of my truck, we have a warrant to search your property. I figured you might. I handed him my keys. Help yourself. While his team tore apart my garage, my house, and my life, I sat on the front steps and watched. Emily and Tyler were at school, which was a blessing. Laura was inside, presumably being questioned about her husband's alleged criminal activities. They found exactly what Jack had promised they would find: Melissa's diamond earrings in my toolbox, bank documents with my fingerprints in my filing cabinet, a burner phone hidden in my bedroom closet with her number programmed into it. All of it planted, all of it designed to paint a picture of a man who'd stalked and liquidated his ex-wife in cold blood. This is pretty damning evidence, Blackwood said, showing me a photograph of Melissa wearing the earrings they'd found in my garage. Care to explain how these ended up in your possession? Someone put them there. Who? The same someone who eliminated Melissa and wants me to take the blame for it? And who would that be? I looked at him, this cop who thought he had all the answers, and I realized he was just another piece on Jack's chessboard. A tool to be used and discarded when his purpose was served. Jack Sullivan, I said. Blackwood wrote the name in his little notebook. And why would Mr. Sullivan want to frame you for homicide? Because I ruined his life 3 years ago and he's been planning his revenge ever since. That's quite a theory. Can you prove it? I couldn't, and we both knew it. Jack had been too careful, too methodical. Every piece of evidence pointed to me, and every witness who might have testified otherwise was either dead, compromised, or controlled by him. No, I said. I can't prove it. Then I'm afraid you're under arrest for the homicide of Melissa Bennett. He read me my rights while his team finished destroying my home. Through the window, I could see Laura sitting at our kitchen table, her face pale and drawn. She looked at me once, and I saw the apology in her eyes. I also saw the resignation. She was going to testify against me. Not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. Jack had made sure of that. As they loaded me into the back of a police car, I thought about Emily and Tyler coming home from school to find crime scene tape around their house, and their father gone. I thought about the life we'd built here, the peace we'd found, the family we'd become. Jack Sullivan had taken all of it away from us, just like I'd taken his stolen car business away from him. The difference was I'd been right to stop him. He was just getting started. 6 months later, I sat in a courtroom in Portland, listening to my wife testify against me. Laura looked older, worn down by the weight of what she was doing. She spoke clearly and calmly, telling the jury about the night I'd allegedly confessed to eliminating Melissa. He said he couldn't let her get away with destroying our family, she testified. He said she deserved what happened to her. My lawyer, a public defender named Patricia Hayes, who was competent but overworked, objected when she could and cross-examined when it mattered. But the evidence was overwhelming, and we both knew it. The earrings, the documents, the security footage of a man who looked like me leaving Melissa's building, Laura's testimony about my alleged confession. And behind it all, Jack Sullivan sitting in the gallery every day with a satisfied smile on his face. He'd won, and he knew it. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the foreman stood up and delivered the verdict that would end my life. Guilty of homicide in the 1st degree. The judge sentenced me to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As they led me away in shackles, I looked back at the gallery one last time. Jack was gone, probably celebrating somewhere. But Laura was still there, tears streaming down her face, mouthing the words, "I'm sorry," over and over again. It didn't matter now. Emily and Tyler had been placed in foster care when I was arrested. They were good kids, smart kids, and I hoped they'd find a family that could give them the love and stability they deserved. I hoped they'd forget about their father who'd become a butcher in their eyes. I hoped they'd have better lives than I'd been able to give them. Prison is exactly what you'd expect it to be. Loud, violent, filled with men who've made terrible choices and are paying for them in the only currency the system accepts: time. I've been here 18 months now, and I've adapted the way I adapted to everything else in my life. I work in the automotive shop, fixing the same kinds of problems I used to fix in my garage. I read books from the library, mostly crime novels that make me laugh with their unrealistic portrayals of investigation and justice. I write letters to Emily and Tyler that I never send. Once a month, Laura visits me. We sit across from each other in the visiting room, separated by bulletproof glass, and we talk about nothing important. The weather, the books I'm reading, how she's doing with her writing. We never talk about Sophie, who's living safely with her father in Denver, unaware that her mother destroyed a family to save hers. We never talk about Jack Sullivan, who disappeared 6 months after my conviction and hasn't been seen since. We never talk about the truth. Today, Laura looks different, nervous, excited, like she has news she's not sure how to share. "I finished my book," she says. "The one about betrayal and revenge?" "Yes, my agent thinks it might be a bestseller. The story of a woman who helps frame an innocent man for homicide to protect her daughter. She calls it morally complex." I laugh, and the sound echoes off the concrete walls. Morally complex. That's one way to put it. Eric, don't. I hold up my hand to stop her. Don't apologize again. Don't tell me you had no choice. Don't try to make yourself feel better about what you did. She nods, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Just tell me one thing," I say. "Was any of it real? The love, the marriage, the family we built together?" She's quiet for a long moment, considering the question. "All of it was real," she says finally. "That's what made it so hard." The guard announces that visiting time is over. Lara stands up, gathers her purse, and prepares to walk back into the world where she's free and I'm not. Eric, she says, her hand pressed against the glass between us. I hope someday you can forgive me. I already have, I lie. Take care of yourself, Lara. She leaves, and I'm escorted back to my cell, where I'll spend the next 30 or 40 years of my life paying for a crime I didn't commit. But here's the thing about revenge. It's never really over. Jack Sullivan thinks he won because I'm in prison and he's free. He thinks justice was served because the man who ruined his life is now ruined himself. He's wrong. Because while I've been sitting in this cell, reading and writing and planning, Jack has been living his life without looking over his shoulder. He's gotten comfortable, careless, convinced that his victory is permanent. He's forgotten that I'm not just Eric Bennett, the mechanic who sued him 3 years ago. I'm also Rick Carson, the man who disappeared completely and built a new life from nothing. I'm a man who knows how to plan, how to wait, how to strike when the moment is right. And I'm not done with him yet. The warden announced yesterday that there's a new program for inmates with technical skills. We'll be working with a computer company, doing data entry and basic programming for minimum wage. It's supposed to teach us job skills we can use when we get out. I volunteered immediately. Because Jack Sullivan made one crucial mistake when he framed me for homicide. He assumed that putting me in prison would end my ability to hurt him. He was wrong about that too. I pick up my pen and start writing another letter to Emily and Tyler, one I'll actually send this time. I want them to know that their father didn't eliminate anyone, that the man they knew and loved is still inside me somewhere, waiting for the chance to prove his innocence. I want them to know that this story isn't over yet. Outside my cell window, the sun is setting over Portland, painting the sky the color of blood and fire. Somewhere in that city, Jack Sullivan is eating dinner, watching television, sleeping peacefully in his bed, enjoying his freedom. For now. I finish the letter, seal it in an envelope, and place it on the small desk in my cell. Tomorrow, I'll give it to the mail clerk, and it will make its way to my children, carrying with it a promise that their father is still fighting. Then I lie down on my narrow bunk and close my eyes, and I dream about the day when Jack Sullivan will finally understand what real revenge looks like. The day when he'll learn that some debts can never be paid in full. The day when he'll discover that there really is no safe harbor from the consequences of what we do to each other. And in my dreams, I'm smiling.